Well, hey, everybody, Pastor Steve. Glad you're with me today. We are today and for the next couple of days going to read 4 chapters from the Old Testament book called Song of Solomon. Some Bibles call it the Song of Songs, but Song of Solomon. And today we are in chapter 1. This is a very unique book in the Bible, probably not one that you go to very often devotionally, not one you study. It's not a letter that's written to a church. It's not a book about the history of the nation of Israel or anything like that. It's not even really a book of wisdom, even though there is wisdom in it. It's a very unique book. There really is not any significant theology in it. There's theology behind it, but it's not really a book about theology. And over the centuries, there have been varying opinions about how to interpret the Book of Solomon. A lot of people over the years have viewed it purely as allegory, all of it as allegory. A description of God's love for his people, i.e. Israel. And then in the early centuries of the church, some substituted the church. So God's love for the church is all allegory. I don't think that's the accurate way to interpret this book. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's actually what you think it is. It's a passionate description of a love story. Romance and marriage between Solomon and this young maiden, the Shulamite. It is what it exactly says it is. Now, there's the underlying truth that some of the things that are said about, the love of these two individuals for each other is true of God's love for us, his people, and us for him. But that's not the real message of the Song of Solomon. Now, it's also difficult to read and understand because it's not written smoothly chronologically. Notice the title, Song of Solomon. What you have is a collection of several poems that were sung. It's poetic music, and it's just a collection of them describing this relationship, and they're not set in chronological order. So they're just kind of all mingled in there. And that's challenging for us because we're used to reading things in chronological order. That's not how this is. It's just, think of it like a collection of poems, a collection of songs, and they're just put together in a book, but they could have been written at different times. And so they're not in sequence. They're not in order. The other thing is it's not always easy to know who is speaking. And our chapter divisions contribute to that confusion sometimes because in a couple of verses, it may be Solomon speaking. In a few more verses, it may be that young maiden, the Shulamite. In another passage, it may be what's referred to in chapter 1 as the daughters of Jerusalem. And then there's some other minor characters. So it's not always easy to know who exactly is talking when you read these verses. And so within a chapter, the speaker can change. So it may be like 3 verses are a poem from Solomon, and 2 verses are a poem, a song from the Shulamite, and it's back and forth, and it's just not always easy. So that adds to the confusion sometimes. But it really is a love story. And it makes the point that God is pro-marriage. God created marriage. And this is a book in the Bible all about romance and sensuality and even the sexual passions of a man and a woman. So God is pro-marriage, and God is pro-sexual intimacy between a husband and a wife. All of that is in here. Now, Solomon is the primary author and probably the one who pulled this collection of poems that were set to music together. He's mentioned multiple times, I think 6 times in this particular book. And in chapter 1, it begins with a young maiden expressing her desire to receive Solomon's love, Solomon's affection, if you will. And but you also get the sense in chapter 1 that she does not see herself. She does not view herself as a beautiful woman. She sees all these other beautiful, gorgeous women. And it doesn't mean she thinks she's ugly, but in comparison to them, she doesn't feel like she measures up. And so notice what she says, this Shulamite young maiden in verses 5 and 6. She says, I am black, but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am swarthy or dark complexion is what it means, for the sun has burned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard. That doesn't mean she was African or that she was black necessarily in the way we think of that word. She may have been, but that's not what this is saying. What it's saying is that she had a dark complexion because she worked out in the sun, taking care of the vineyards. Her home life wasn't a great one. Her brothers were angry with her, so they sent her out and she worked in the field, taking care of the vineyards in the sun, and that dries your skin, that tans your skin. And yeah, I know we often think of a tan as a beautiful thing, but it can be so much that it dries your skin out. And she says, don't y'all think bad of me because I'm not like these other women who were raised in the palaces and they're fair and their complexion, their skin is smooth and they're treated with lotion all the time and they're protected from the sun. She said, I had a rough upbringing. I had to work out in the fields in the sun and it had an impact on my body, she is saying. And so at the end of verse 6, she said, I was the caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard. That's just her way of saying, I took care of these vineyards, but I didn't have the opportunity to take care of my own body, to care for my own flesh and make myself beautiful and protected from the sun, the way some of these women who are raised in the palace have done. So she says in verse 5, I am black, but lovely. She didn't think she was ugly, but she thought that hard labor in the sun had taken a toll on her body, and she wasn't as beautiful in comparison to these other special women. And let's just be honest, a lot of women have struggled with self-image. In today's culture, a lot of girls, teenage girls, young girls, especially with social media, struggle with self-image. It's a serious problem today. But I want you to notice how Solomon responded. Look at verse 8. He said, if you yourself do not know, just in case you don't know, let me tell you, most beautiful among women, even if you don't know, listen, to me, you're the most beautiful woman among the women here. Go forth on the trail of the flock and pasture your young goats by the tents. He said, you are who you are. Verse 9, to me, my darling, you are like my mare among the chariots of Pharaoh. Now, that doesn't sound real romantic to us in 2024 in America, but everything is based on time and place and culture. And the chariots of Pharaoh, and you're the lead mare. Solomon, a soldier, is a beautiful thing. He goes on in verse 10, your cheeks are lovely. Your neck with strings of beads. And then drop down to verse 15. Solomon says to her, how beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like doves. That's probably not something I would say to Monisa today. Your eyes look like doves. I don't know what he means by that, but for their culture in that context, nearly 3,000 years ago, he was saying, your eyes are beautiful. They are lovely. Your neck is beautiful. Your cheeks are beautiful. You are the most beautiful among women. Doing what he could to affirm her beauty because she was beautiful to him. So there's a lesson for us in all this that we need, especially if you're married, we need to see the beauty in our spouse. It's so easy for someone to put down their spouse, criticize their spouse. See the beauty in your spouse, and when you see it, say it. You need to brag on each other. You need to tell each other, I love you. You need to talk about what you love about the other person. You need to speak to them the beauty you see in them. You need to affirm it over and 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 over again and never stop. That for me is some of the takeaway of chapter 1 in the Song of Solomon. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at chapter 2. God bless you.